Hi guys, today we are going to be covering problem statements. So problem statements are a super important thing in engineering. Generally what will happen is your client, whoever you're working with, will come to you with a problem. And the first thing that you'll do is develop a problem statement. Basically, it's a couple sentences describing whatever the thing is that you are trying to fix or solve. This is a really important process. Generally, you'll go kind of back and forth with your client a couple of times because you will be solving whatever problem you describe in that problem statement. And the client wants to make sure you're solving the right thing. And as the first line on that guideline sheet says, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. If you don't know what you're trying to solve, you're probably going to come up with a pretty terrible solution. Now, when you're writing a problem statement, you want to think who, what, when, where, why, right? Your 5 W's. Pretty basic stuff. The first 3 are like the real, you absolutely must have them. So, what is the problem? So, this is pretty obvious. Hopefully. Hopefully you have come up with some kind of problem. So let's see. I am going to write a problem statement for my cat. So the problem is that she has no one to play with her when I'm gone at work, normally. Okay, so there is my problem. Who has the problem or need? Now, this might seem like, okay, well, obviously, I, Miss J, have this problem. And so I could make a solution that's just designed for me, right? And then I could put Miss J, right? And this would be if I was just designing one thing to help my cat. However, so this is option 1. There's another option to say, well, all people who have cats at work. And if you think about this, the solutions to these two things are going to be very different. It might even be similar solutions, but the way that you have to actually manufacture and scale and make the solution for number 2 is going to be super different than number 1. Because number 1 can really just be like a prototype, you know? I don't care if this thing that I make is super complicated or looks beautiful. I don't have to do any PR. I don't have to do any, I don't have to worry about how it's going to scale up, whereas I need to do all those things for number 2. So who has the problem really matters. Even if it's something simple like this, there are actually more options than you would think. And you also, you could add even a third option, like shelters have this problem. So let's say like shelters who like don't have there's no apostrophe there. Shelters who like don't have volunteers certain times of day, or shelters right now where people can't be there, which is a slightly different problem, right? So then we have to update our problem as well, but there's kind of another option. The next one is, why is it important to solve? And I would say, for my cat's mental health, right? So that is my why. Again, I could probably come up with more options here if I wanted to. So it might be that my cat is like, and my cat would never do this, but it might be that my cat is like acting out and like scratching things that she shouldn't, and by making something that she can play with, then I'm hoping that she'll like stop scratching. Again, I could also put that as a different problem. My cat is scratching things while I'm away. But all of these things kind of go together and relate to one another. So ultimately, what you want to do is then put these all together into one kind of 1 or 2 sentences that describe your problem. And this is going to be the basis of our problem statement. So you notice that this is just who, what, and there's no when or where, but there is a why. So if we want, we could add when. So when would be like, this could be many different things. So during the school year, right? Because I only teach during the school year, and during the summer I'm home more. Or like from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., right? And something like that might have an impact on something like battery life. Does it need to be plugged into a wall if it's going to last for that long? And let's see, who, what, when, where. So where, again, we kind of come back to a similar thing as who, right? Because if we're choosing the shelter option, it's obviously the shelter, but because I'm doing this for myself, then it would be my house. Or maybe if I had an indoor-outdoor cat, then it might be like my backyard. But Sasha is just an indoor cat. Right, and if it was in your backyard, that would have an impact on your design, because then it has to be waterproof, then it has to, then you have the option to do something like solar panels to power it. So all of these things really impact your design. But the absolute minimum is that you have who, what, and why. When and where can definitely be helpful as well. Okay, so now we have the basis of our problem statement. So let's turn it into an actual statement. So I will say, Miss J's cat, Sasha, has no one to play with her at work. So Miss J is concerned for her mental health. Right, so now I can see that Miss J, I am the one who have the problem, or you could even say Miss J's cat, but in this case, my kind of client, the person I'm really designing for, my client is Miss J, but my, who the design is for is actually my cat. So this one's a little kind of in between on the who. And the problem is that she has no one to play with. And so, I'm concerned for her mental health. So we have our who, we have our what, and we have our why in here. So that's a pretty good start. An important thing to notice is there is no solution in here. If I said, so this is our good example. Here's a bad example. So I could say, make a long distance, or I could say make an internet controlled cat toy for Miss J's cat. Right, so you'll notice I have a who still. But instead of having a what is the problem, I have a solution. So this first half of my problem statement is the solution, which is no bueno. Okay, because this really limits your kind of design space. And the goal with our problem statement is to make our design space, the different ideas we can come up with, as big as possible, have as many possible options, while still limiting it to a scope that makes sense for what we're doing and takes into account all the factors we're considering. Because an internet-controlled cat toy is one solution, but it's not the only one. So we want to start out with a broad problem statement, okay? Now, another thing to consider when you're writing up your problem statement, which isn't going to come, or actually it could come up in what you're doing, is you want to add constraints, and objectives. So like this is our first line of our problem statement. And our second line might be something like, the solution must, I'm going to do it on this line down here, be low cost, durable, and must work through a full 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. day. Right, so you can see here I've added in some what we call constraints, right? So I've added in some of my when information, so that 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I don't have where in here, but I have some other things that are important to consider. These will be more important if you're working with an actual client. So someone who says, oh, this has to be really durable because my cat is absolutely nuts, and I don't want to just come home and have this break because it needs to work through at least one entire school year or something like that. Or maybe they say, because I'm selling these, I want to sell them for under $10, and so it must be low cost. Now you all will be interviewing and talking with some elderly folks about your idea, and so you may not have these things right now. You may have some idea of what they might be, and the beauty of a problem statement is that it should be changing over time if you get new information. Now, hopefully it stays fairly the same, right? You don't want to change your entire idea of your problem statement halfway through if you can avoid it, but sometimes that happens too. But it is okay to make adjustments as you go through to make sure that you are still describing the correct problem or to take into account new information. So there is another example in the guidelines document about like fishing, but hopefully this is enough to get you started. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and if you would like to meet up for office hours, just send me an email and I can make myself available. I will see you all soon. Bye.